The biblical prophet Ezekiel chronicles the long, complex history of the great city of Jerusalem as the dramatic rise and fall of a marriage. In his 16th chapter, he describes God finding the city as an abandoned infant in an open field, rescuing her and raising her to royalty. As her husband, God bestowed her with gold, silver, and fine linen, transforming a helpless outcast into a queen of renowned beauty and prosperity. This relationship was defined by a covenant, a legally and relationally binding oath of exclusive loyalty that functioned as the ancient world's version of a marriage contract. Ezekiel suggests that to understand why this city eventually faced a catastrophic collapse, we have to look at the relational friction building within the household. That household centered on a single location, the Grand Temple in Jerusalem. The temple served as the shared home for God and his people, the inner sanctuary where the presence of the husband dwelt alongside his bride. But the narrative takes a dark turn when Jerusalem begins taking the very gold and silver her husband provided to craft idols and attract foreign lovers. Ezekiel identifies this as spiritual adultery. By adopting foreign religious rituals, the people were effectively inviting rival lovers into God's own house. In a series of visions, Ezekiel is brought to the threshold of this home to inspect the evidence of this betrayal for himself. The Spirit lifts Ezekiel in a vision and brings him to the temple gates, beginning an escalating tour of the internal corruption. At the north gate, he encounters the image of jealousy, a pagan fertility idol erected within the sacred temple precincts. This idol is named for the reaction it provokes. By placing a rival object of devotion at the entrance of the house, the people directly challenge the exclusive covenant jealousy of God. Ezekiel is then led to a hidden entrance where he discovers a secret chamber occupied by the 70 elders of Israel. In the dark, the leaders of the nation offer incense to walls covered in carvings of creeping things and beasts, the very animals the law of God forbade them from worshiping. These elders operate under the cynical assumption that their actions are invisible, telling themselves that the Lord has forsaken the land and does not see their rituals. This wasn't an accidental lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate, top-down rejection of their marital loyalty by the very men responsible for the nation's spiritual health. The vision moves back to the outer gate, where Ezekiel sees a group of women sitting and weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz was a Babylonian fertility god. According to the myth, his death and rebirth controlled the cycles of the seasons, and his worshippers would mourn his passing annually. The presence of this ritual at the temple gate shows how deeply Babylonian culture had replaced the people's emotional attachment to their own covenant. Finally, the Spirit brings Ezekiel into the inner court, the space directly preceding the most holy area of the temple. Here, 25 men stand between the porch and the altar, the elite representatives of the priesthood. They stand with their backs to the temple of the Lord, facing east to worship the rising sun. In the middle of God's own house, they have physically turned away from his presence to bow before a created object. Ezekiel classifies these scenes as abominations, acts that are morally offensive and signify a public violation of the marriage bond. In response, God does not strike the city with fire. Instead, he begins a quiet and deliberate withdrawal from the relationship. Ezekiel watches as the glory of the Lord, the manifest presence of God, rises from the inner sanctuary and moves to the threshold of the temple. Like a husband leaving a defiled home, the divine presence exits the city, leaving the temple empty and vulnerable. But the narrative of Ezekiel does not end with a final departure. God promises a future restoration where he will cleanse the people of their idols and give them a new heart and a new spirit to sustain their loyalty. In a later vision, Ezekiel sees the glory of the Lord returning to a purified temple, signaling a reconciliation between the husband and his bride. The visual record of the abominations reveals the depth of the betrayal, but the final chapters reveal a husband who holds out the hope of a renewed, faithful covenant.